Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quorum Podcast. This is where academic medicine meets remote, austere, and resource-limited areas. Welcome back to the program. This is Aebhric O'Kelly. This week, we are with Professor Enrico Brunetti from the University of Pavia. Enrico, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Aebhric. Thanks for having me.
So, tell us a bit about yourself and what's keeping you busy.
So professionally, I'm an infectious disease clinician, and I've been using ultrasound since time immemorial, meaning I really started out in earnest in 1984. I happened to be here as a student, and there was a group of basically four enthusiastic young doctors that were hold themselves up in a room, and they were with a patient, and they were looking at this weird box with a green screen. There was one of the earliest ultrasound scanners, and
Wow.
they were really fired up. And at the time, ultrasound is at least for us, first and foremost, a clinical tool. Most of the time, you have answers that you can fit in a clinical picture. So this is one thing. The combination of infectious disease that is never boring. I mean, it's always different. Maybe a couple of decades ago, one of our residents did a thesis on ultrasound in tropical medicine. He went to Brazil for a couple of months, and he came back and he handed me this very big book with all the applications of ultrasound in tropical medicine. And then I got the idea from him that I could organize a short course on tropical medicine. This came after I met Professor McPherson in Kampala years ago, and I talked to him about this idea, and he gave me the green light. So I felt, let's say, emboldened, and with Joachim Richter, another tropical medicine with ultrasound German infectious disease specialist, we started this thing, and then a number of other things. There's technology, there's, then the internet came along, and, it's like a chain of events, and here we are. And one of the things that never ceases to amaze me is that after 40 years of using ultrasound, ultrasound in clinical practice, people still find new application, new things, because no one has bother to look at things with ultrasound before. So it's very much something that has lots of room for development and new things. It's very far from being I would say, mature technology.
That's remarkable that you were doing this in the 80s. My first ultrasound in an emergency department was a bladder scanner in like 2000. And you wheeled it in like it was gigantic. And it's only black and white, and then it's jumped forward since then, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think since you mentioned emergency medicine, one has to acknowledge the role of a surgeon, Professor Grace Rosicki, who was, she's a trauma surgeon. She's now, I think, head of department somewhere in the East Coast. She was a pivotal figure because she insisted that you could see hemorrhage in the abdomen in trauma patients with ultrasound. And this was, at the time, she was ridiculed, believe it or not. And now, this is common knowledge, of course, but it's interesting how, we think there's a new technology, everybody, will fall over themselves to to adopt it. It's not necessarily the case. So the other thing that, as far as ultrasonic clinical practice is concerned, is that, to my knowledge, there are 2 countries where ultrasound was immediately adopted by clinicians. Here I'm talking about mostly internal medicine. And those countries are Germany and Italy. In Italy, there was a small group of infectious disease doctors that were early adopters, probably 3 or 4 cities in Italy, 3 or 4 big hospitals or universities. And basically, they took it from there, and they're still using it and still trying to convince other people that ultrasound is really a key part of any clinical endeavor for most patients.
You mentioned cutting edge. I was at a conference in Arzamot, and somebody came up and showed that they could see the circle of Willis in the head with an ultrasound going through they can't quite figure out. I mean, they can at least see it, and they're trying to measure it. But I mean, this is pretty cutting edge, I think, on point of care. No, this is with a butterfly. There's transdoppler ultrasound, of course, but that's in hospital. But no, this was just with a handheld. Yeah. So I think you're right, Professor, that we are just seeing breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough with point-of-care ultrasound.
The other week, I was looking at there was a paper somewhere. I don't know why I was looking for something. So I came across a paper that where they claimed that you can see sinusitis. If you put the transducer on the at the side of the nose, you can actually see hyperechogenic stuff under the bone, and I think that this is very typical of us. For everything new, we just don't look where things could happen, and you accidentally sort of bump into them. And then the important point is to retain what you saw. And again, in the field of infectious diseases, I was thinking of running a scoping review about point-of-care ultrasound in infectious diseases. I actually found last week a review paper on POCUS in low-income countries. The idea was how to apply AI. So I don't know if it's worthwhile or not, but the fact is that if you look at any current review paper on the application of point-of-care ultrasound in low-resource settings, just unbelievably broad. There are so many things. Now, the other side of the coin, of course, it's all very fine and dandy. You can do lots of stuff, but also is a very operator-dependent tool. So the other side of the coin is how you train people to match at least some basic level of quality. And again, the point is that because the use of ultrasound is the things that you can do with ultrasound are so many, I don't think anybody can claim, in a manner of speaking, complete ownership of the tool. So now, it's established that you're a cardiologist, you do echocardiography, you're an OBGYN, you do your stuff on pregnant patients. You are a rheumatologist, you do ultrasound on joints, and you're orthopedic surgeons, you look for the bone surface. You can actually diagnose osteomyelitis with ultrasound. I mean, of course, it's not MRI, it's not CT, but if you don't have anything else, if it's sub-Saharan Africa, it comes in pretty handy.
So, Professor, you matched up your passions of ultrasound and tropical diseases and created a 5-day short course in ultrasound and infectious diseases and tropical medicine. And this is where we met a year and a half ago. And you've since been running this, and now you've created a PG cert. But let's start with the short course, the 5-day course.
Okay.
Why did you design it? What's the medic going to learn in 5 days in Pavia?
When that resident came back from Brazil, I had this idea of doing ultrasound in tropical medicine because there were so many applications. But so I talked with Callum, I talked with Joachim, and all I did is I paid someone, I think at the time it was €300 to set up a page on the web advertising the course. And after a few days, I got a call from someone from Oregon. She was a radiologist that had been working in Papua New Guinea. And I couldn't believe my eyes because say, hey, this thing is working. And so, we started basically from scratch. At the time, I had no idea how to organize anything. And so basically it was very much of a one-man band, meaning that I would go to the airport to pick up guests, drive back, put them up in a hotel, and then doing routine work in the morning, and then doing in the morning, and then giving lectures in the afternoon together with Callum and Joachim. And Joachim had his daughter, I think she was 6 or 7 at the time, and she was in charge of giving the next slide of the presentation. So Joachim would go next day, and she would hit the button. So it was great. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it was really bottom up. There was no plan. And then I thought, I had this idea. It's great, but maybe, London School of Tropical Medicine will steal the idea and, I'm out of business. And year after year, this failed to happen. So, we continued, and now we have a faculty of many, but basically they're people that share the same idea and they're all enthusiasts. Of course, we don't make any money. Sometimes we break even, but it's really more a labor of love. And of course, we have fun because every time you learn new things, and the faculty changes over time. There are new people, old people leave. It's very much in flux. Then, of course, we found Sylvia was our secretary, was a key person. This year we have Paolo Baroni, who's also in charge of organization. And so, it's completely unpredictable, but it works because people are interested. So the original question was, what do they learn? They learn to scan. There are practical sessions, so people scan each other under the guidance of tutors. But for me, this is more like a way to show how great is the number of things you can do with ultrasound in infectious diseases and in tropical medicine. I remember a conversation that we had with Corey that you introduced to the course. And he told me, I couldn't understand what has ultrasound to do with tropical medicine, because we're two completely different things in my mind. And then, it clicked. I came to the course and I realized where is the connection. So I think that's important. We don't claim anyone can be an accomplished sonographer after 5 days, of course, in Pavia, but it's a great opportunity to meet other people, to exchange ideas. It's very, very informal. I mean, there's no final exam, but certainly I think many people leave sort of surprised at the amount of things that you can do with ultrasound, and I mean the mission accomplished.
So you run this every October, is that right?
Yeah, we try. We used to do it once a year. And then we try to do twice a year. So we had one edition in March, I think, and the next one is in October. That's the in-presence course. And then last year, we tried to set up this online course, which is, I would say, very much still in the works. It's a great opportunity for those who cannot travel. Of course, there's no hands-on session because it's entirely online. But on the other hand, you get to have many more great speakers and prominent scholars in their field that can share their knowledge. So on the one hand, it's less than, let's say, your short course. On the other hand, it's much broader because you don't have the sort of geographical constraints. So this year we had people lecturing from Malaysia, from UK, from US, Germany, Africa. So there are pros and cons. And with the two courses, we're trying to, sort of compensate for one another.
So both of those courses, you have a 5-day course in Pavia, University of Pavia, and then you have an online course that we're currently going through at the moment. And both of those together, you're giving out a postgraduate certificate or diploma?
That's with the online course. With the in-presence course, it's just it's not even run by the university, strictly speaking, but for administrative reasons.
So you can earn a postgraduate diploma
with the online course. That's awesome. The University of Pavia diploma. If you go to the webpage, there are exactly the number of credits that you can get, European credits, etc. And all the conditions are laid out. We're still transitioning. I mean, we have our site, which is linked to the university site, and the university site is still in progress itself, because there's a very small number of people that are organizing a number of postgraduate courses at the university. So they're really working hard on that. So it's still in progress. We're encouraged because, once again, this is a unique course. I don't know why other institutions haven't adopted this, but I'm relatively happy that they didn't, because we have no competition, so to speak. I can't think of any other institution doing exactly what we do, and this is
I've looked.
I'm happy to say that.
I spent a lot of time looking around, and your institution popped up because I look around to see I'm just passionate about ultrasound. I'm passionate about TropMed, and you combine both of those together. Yeah. So there isn't anyone else. It's just you, and your faculty are all over. I was at Kilimanjaro Christian Medical Center last October.
Yeah.
And I ran into one of your faculty there.
Oh, yeah. That's actually our 4th-year resident, also an ultrasound enthusiast, Gianluca Alessandro. Yeah, he was there for 2 months. Finally, someone realized that there is viral hepatitis in Africa. And with ultrasound, it's much easier to have a better grasp of the magnitude of the problem, the stage, the disease, etc. And so I have this resident who was an ultrasound enthusiast, and he's looking for to spend a couple of months somewhere where he can learn stuff about tropical medicine. So they got connected, and he came back. I mean, he came back absolutely full of enthusiasm, and this thing are, I think, worth working for. So it's, again, the ramification of the course, the amount of connections with interesting people, and the amount of, creativity.
So, Professor, can you answer a question that I always get when I talk about my time in Pavia?
Yeah.
So what is the list of tropical diseases that can be found by ultrasound?
Oh, there's a long list, but there's a few diseases where you have a lot of scope. You have lots of, let's say, applications, and there are others where the applications are fewer, and then there are still others where, to give you an example, you have someone in amoebic abscess. Ultrasound is crucial. Why? Because you can diagnose. Secondly, because you can use it to treat, because you can drain the abscess with ultrasound guidance. And third, because once you drain the abscess, you can follow the patient and see whether or not there's resolution of the abscess. Okay, so this is group one. Then there's another group where things can or cannot be important. For instance, there's work from, among others, Francesca Tamarozzi, who was also a faculty at the course, and she's a prominent clinical parasitologist working in Negar. It showed that you have, for instance, hyperechogenic nodules in filaria. You can use ultrasound to assess the presence of filaria in lymphatic vessels. And then there are tropical diseases where it's still unclear whether or not ultrasound is useful, but it's an open question, meaning, for instance, you have malaria. Malaria, where can you use ultrasound in malaria? Well, splenomegaly, okay, that's pretty obvious. But then I've seen a paper about the use of ultrasound in respiratory distress in malaria. And then there is ongoing research on the role of ultrasound in the optic nerve diameter as an index or as a surrogate index or proxy of increased intracranial pressure. We authored a chapter, the first chapter in the Manson's book on textbook tropical medicine. There are 3 groups of diseases, and there are groups where the group 1 is where ultrasound is very useful. Group 2 is where somewhat useful, and number 3 is what might be useful but not super useful as of today.
For the medic on the ground, that what you're mentioning about malaria is fantastic. I mean, being able to, so we look at the optic nerve sheath for TBI, for brain injuries.
Yeah.
But so your patient has malaria, severe malaria, gets to the point where they can't swallow anymore. You can still monitor the optic nerve sheath to see how much brain involvement is there with malaria.
Yeah, there is work by Terry. I can't remember the last name, but she's someone working in sub-Saharan Africa, Terry Taylor, and she managed to get I think a CT scan or MRI, I think a CT scan in her hospital, and she was able to compare what you can see with ultrasound with a CT scan as far as patients in a coma with malaria are concerned. I'm not super updated with that, but I remember a few years ago, together with some residents, we wrote up like a review paper on that, and Terry Taylor is doing a lot of interesting work on cerebral malaria in kids in sub-Saharan Africa.
Also, recently on our WhatsApp group, somebody drops a video of a echocardiogram with some sort of tropical disease in the chamber. What was that?
Myocardial fibrosis, maybe?
No, it's floating in the middle of the chamber.
Like,
is that a filarius?
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay. Oh, you mentioned, you mean your group?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I mean, it's, you look around and you never cease to find interesting stuff.
Yeah. So for the medic who is interested in learning about this, they can come to Pavia in October or March. And if they can't come, they can do your online postgraduate diploma.
Yeah. Or they can do both.
Or they can do both, as I did. Yeah.
They're no mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So for the medic that really wants to learn more and has a pretty good understanding of ultrasound, a little bit of understanding of TropMed, where in the world can they go to get a ton of experience and access to tropical diseases with mentorship in POCUS?
Well, that's a tough question. I think we talked about this when you were here about the fact that there are a few sites with a potential great interest, but you need to have structure. So there are hospitals where people are doing actually, loads of ultrasound every day. The point is the logistics to get there and the fact that they're so busy, they have no time to coach or mentor anyone. Are too daunting. So the point is that I'm still hoping, we came close 10 years ago. We applied for an AU-funded project to do ultrasound in Uganda, in a place called Lachor, where they have an excellent radiologist doing a lot of scans per day, but the project was, the applications was rejected because they said there was, political turmoil, which was not the case, but there was no way to convince the reviewers that even they got a letter signed by the hospital director, but to no avail. So the only way I see, and again, it's not a short-term thing, But the only way I think we can organize something like that, meaning to open up a channel to a place where you exposed to tropical diseases on a daily basis, and you have someone who has the expertise and the time to train people. I think we need funding, and so we need to come up with some kind of project or some kind of application for that. Other than that, I think it's just very, very, very unlikely.
My next trip to KCMC there in northern Tanzania, I'll be bringing my IQ3, and I'll see what I can do. I'll spend a week there and see what's available. So you talked about political turmoil. Northern Tanzania is one of the most stable and safe
was
countries.
Uganda at the time, but if the people you're begging money say there is, I mean, it's their money. I mean, the money stays in their pockets.
Yeah, no doubt.
But this shouldn't be discouraging. I mean, there's it's a worthy thing that requires a lot of effort. So I think it's worth it's worth the effort.
In class, you mentioned a site in Malawi.
Yeah.
Is that still available?
I think this is where Tom Heller, which was the main faculty and one of the leader of the course, was based. But after, I think, the funds being cut to USAID's, I think Tom is back in Germany, because I texted him today and say, I'm back in Germany. So he's now based in Germany, and his wife also a infectious disease doctor with expertise in ultrasound, is also in Munich, Germany. But maybe you can connect with Tom and see if he has any opening for Malawi.
Professor, my final question for you is this. What advice do you have for the new medic, the new nurse, the new doc who is just starting out on their ultrasound adventure?
Be patient. It takes time. But if you, if you have interest, and I think once you start, it's almost impossible to unsee the enormous value, clinical and otherwise, that ultrasound has for infectious diseases, for tropical medicine, and for resource poor areas. You may be aware that there's a thing, there's a global, let's call it, movement called POCUS that has been founded by Luca Neri. Luca Neri was, at the time, was a surgeon working, I think, in Mozambique. And he was there for 4 years, and then one day he discovered in a closet a very old ultrasound machine, and he literally saw the light, and he started this global society. So I think if someone is convinced that ultrasound can make a difference, they will find their way, they will find the path. And there's a lot of people that are willing to help the travel, if you will, and so they will find a way, no doubt.
Well, Professor, thank you for being our guest today, and I look forward to seeing you again in Pavia this autumn.
All right, very good. Likewise here, and thanks again for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
This has been a presentation from the College of Remote and Offshore Medicine. If you would like to earn CPD credits for this podcast, you can join the Council of Members. Being a member of the college gives you free CPD credit, free access to our virtual field guide, and discounts on our e-learning courses. You can join the team on our college website at quorum.edu.mt.